You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast with your ADHD coach and expert, Zena. My friend, what if there was a simple tool that could take your anxiety from a 9 out of 10 down to a 4? Okay, a technique that would help you with your procrastination and the self-doubt and the feeling of shame for being both too much and not enough at the same time, right? Things that us ADHDers struggle with. Well, my friend, there is such a tool. I have actually talked about it here on the podcast before, and that is exactly what we are exploring in today's episode with my friend Jess Johnson. So in our conversation, Jess actually shares with us her personal story as another late diagnosed ADHDer. And she shares with us how discovering EFT, the emotional freedom technique, transformed her approach to how she actually manages her ADHD symptoms. So we're going to discuss in this episode, you'll hear us talk about what is EFT? How does it work? What are the benefits for people with ADHD? Some of which include stress reduction, right? Improving focus and helping us to regulate our emotion, calm ourselves down. Okay. And you don't have to just take my word for it or her word for it, because there is a shit ton of research and evidence that shows just how powerful using this technique is across multiple areas of your life. Okay. And we are so lucky because Jess has actually created an incredible workbook. It's completely free and you can download it. It's in the show notes here. So once you've listened to this episode, you can actually grab this workbook and you can, use this technique yourself, and you'll have somebody guiding you through exactly how to do that. All right. So before we dive in, I want to introduce you to Jess. So Jess is a mind-body connection coach, and she is a former therapist, right? And she uses a mix of mindset coaching and evidence-based EFT, which again stands for the emotional freedom technique. Now, she guides her clients to calm their nervous systems, to clear the mental clutter, which, let's be real, we have a fair bit of, and to take action from a place of self-trust instead of self-doubt. So her work is actually like a blend of, I love how she says this, it's a blend of science meets soul with a side of iridescence. Right? Because healing does not have to be so serious, and self-trust works better than self-discipline. Amen. Now, I also have to mention to you guys that she is a fellow cat lover. She has 2 gorgeous, delicious, fluffy cats of her own, and she lives in one of my favorite places on the planet. She lives in on the magical island of Oahu in Hawaii. So again, in the show notes, right, wherever you are listening to this episode, you are going to find the link to the free workbook that she has created, which teaches you how to use this technique that we're going to talk all about and break down in this episode, okay? And you're also going to find a tapping script, which, don't worry, is going to make way more sense once you start listening, all right? So my friend, get ready to hear how you can tap into calm and regulate your nervous system with our special guest today, Jess Johnson. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, where today we have a very special guest, and I am so excited for you all to meet my friend and colleague, Jess Johnson, who lives all the way over in Hawaii, which I love. I love that for you, and I love that for me too. I want us to dive straight in, Jess, and can you start by telling us about your ADHD story? What led to your diagnosis, how old you were, all the things?
So, geez, in true ADHD fashion, I want to jump all over the place when I tell it, right? So I'll just start with, I'm 40, about to be 46. I'll be 46 on Friday. And it was, I think, 3 years ago that I was diagnosed. And interestingly enough, I was pretty resistant. If you had heard, if I heard anything about ADHD, I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit, and not kind of realizing I was relating so hard
Yeah.
to things, right?
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I think I kind of grew up with was um, you have to, like, don't get too big for your britches, and like stop feeling sorry for yourself, and
Yes.
just kind of have gratitude for what you have, which like, yes. And also, when you're a
Mm.
kid, you don't really understand all the feelings that you're having.
Mm-hmm.
um, it makes it hard to kind of relate to those things, right? And so that there, and this is, we're going to kind of dive into the work I do too, because I know why this is so important, those childhood experiences that you have. And for me, there was just definitely something in there that was around like laziness with ADHD. It's just an excuse, right?
Yeah.
And I had diagnoses before, which was interesting because I'm a therapist. I'm a former therapist. I've been coaching for 5 years now. And when I had gotten out of the army and become an entrepreneur, like things really were like kind of caving in on me. I was having a really hard time staying on task, figuring out what it is I wanted to do. I am definitely somebody who kind of sees the opportunity in everything, and I can get really excited, go head all in to stuff, and either get tired of it or get completely overwhelmed that I give up on it. And so I had joined the Army when I was 32 years old, and I served for 5 years, and I had no idea just how many doors being a veteran was going to open up for me.
Mm.
So this put me in kind of that state of overwhelm when I got out of the Army and became an entrepreneur. I was flooded with all of these ideas. I couldn't figure out how to keep track of any one of them. I was also really having difficulty in my transition from the army, and I hadn't really expected that. So I was in therapy at the time and diagnosed with bipolar 2
Yeah.
disorder, which is, frequently characterized by a little more depression, and then like periods of hypomania, but kind of some of what I had been experiencing kind of looked like that. And that diagnosis never sat well with me. Before
Right.
I was in the army, like I worked in corrections, and I worked with major Axis 1 mental health
Mm-hmm.
disorders, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew bipolar disorder pretty well. And I was always just like, this doesn't sit, just doesn't sit with me. And I was having a session with somebody, an EFT session, which I know we're going to talk about today. And we tapped on a memory that I had when I was younger. And something within that session cleared something up so big that right after I got off the Zoom call, I called, made a appointment with my primary care physician, who then referred me to a psychiatrist, and got tested for ADHD. And that was so different. The second I got that diagnosis, like something clicked in me,
Yeah.
and it just felt like, oh, like this puzzle piece had
Right.
been given to me.
Yeah. Everything finally made sense. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. And I think this is something I really want to talk about, because I know that a lot of people, when they're diagnosed in adulthood, particularly women, there's like a grieving period, or like
Yeah.
a period of shock too, of like and feeling of like, oh, there was something wrong with me or whatever. Like I don't believe that. I don't think there's anything wrong with any one of us. And there are so many incredible things about the way ADHD brains work. And
Mm-hmm.
I just really kind of like telling people that. For me, this was a positive experience getting that
Yeah.
diagnosis. I
Yeah.
I think I had done a lot of grieving beforehand. And so
Yes.
when that him, I was like, oh yeah, okay. I got this. This makes sense. Now I have an answer.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Tell me about how you discovered EFT tapping.
Mhm. So I discovered EFT. I first heard about it. I was traveling in Peru, and I was actually coaching a trip for entrepreneurs in Peru, where we went over there and we were leading workshops
Mm-hmm.
um, in communities. And one of the other entrepreneurs taught tapping. And
Okay.
at that time, I was like, that shit looks weird. I'm not touching
Yeah.
my face. And
I'm not doing that. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, weird, whatever.
Hmm.
And I literally sat in a corner and I listened, but I would not participate in the
Right.
workshop. And I was kind of eye rolling in my head a little bit. And then a year later, I got my dream job co-facilitating retreats for veterans, and they were week-long retreats out in the woods, and we stayed in these cabins, and there was wolf spider infestation in the cabins. And
Oh God,
I've had
wolf spider. Hang on, I just got to
wolf
pause
spider.
because I've got a picture in my head. We don't really get big spiders in New Zealand, but when you say wolf and spider in the same sentence, it's not pretty.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
I
Ugh.
mean, it's not like a big spider with a wolf head, which is where my brain definitely takes that. Um, but they are pretty ugly, hairy, gross spiders, kind of like
Okay.
huntsman spiders. They're not,
Oh,
venomous or anything like that. But wolf spiders do have a bite, and yeah, and they're just like gnarly looking, and they were everywhere. And I was freaking out. I was in therapy at the time for arachnophobia because I had gotten married to my husband, who's a rock climber, and I was having anxiety attacks trying when I was outside climbing.
yeah.
And so the next day I like had written that night. I did not sleep. I wrote my therapist this like stream of conscious email in the middle of the night. I didn't send it. I just wrote it. And then I was able to get like an hour and a half of sleep. But I was so fixated. I was so hypervigilant on the spiders the whole next day. Like just my entire body was like almost cramping up, like was just looking around and I was unable to focus. And so I talked to my co-facilitator and I was like, look, I really want to be here, but I'm really having a problem with these spiders. And, I had worried that she was going to like just let me go or say we have to find somebody else. But instead she was just like, okay, yeah, I get it. Have you ever heard of tapping? And she just walked me through the points. And it's funny because knowing my knowledge base now versus then, um, we were, kind of tapping a little bit all over the place. The setup statement was a little squirrely, but still within 2 rounds, I felt significantly better. And then I started teaching myself EFT. I started introducing it to the veterans I worked with, and I was seeing such profound results with them that then I went and started getting trained in it, and
Yeah.
then put it into my coaching practice.
Wow. Yeah, I love that story of the spiders. I often tell that to people because I think it's just demonstrates how, because I had the same experience as you when I first was like introduced to it. I was like, what the heck? This shit's weird. Like, I'm not doing that, right? Like, I had that kind of a reaction. But then when I went through it with somebody, I was like, holy crap, that is incredible. I feel so much better. So, yeah, but I love the spider story.
Yeah.
I'm curious when we talk about like EFT and the impact that that has on managing your ADHD symptoms. What does
Yeah,
that like look like? Can you kind of give us an overview?
everything. I
Yeah.
mean, where I love to tell the spider story because it kind of showcases just how I was resistant and then how quickly
Mm.
something so huge in my life and measurable. Are you scared of spiders or you're not? Um, but really, truly, the best gift it has been is helping me really understand myself and
Mm.
extend myself grace and compassion and be able to, I like to put it, calm my body and quiet my brain so I can listen to my inner wisdom. I can listen to
Mm.
what I want. And EFT has been instrumental with helping me focus, um, exploring procrastination, getting started in the day. I know for me, with my flavor of ADHD, and I like to call it my flavor of ADHD because I think sometimes we get confused about what an ADHD diagnosis actually is, and we think everything looks one way
Yeah.
and not the other way. So my particular flavor, what was the question I was answering?
Oh, I love that. That's so ADHD. Yes, I'm here for it. We were talking about like the impact of EFT tapping on your symptom management, and I think you were going to talk about how like part of your flavor of ADHD is maybe difficulty starting tasks or like initiating, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely that. And so
Yes.
it allows me to, again, calm my body, quiet my mind so I can listen to my inner wisdom and I
Mm.
can make decisions from there and not just kind of when we get diagnoses, or even let's not make it so much about ADHD, even if we're talking about things like procrastination, which can go a long way with ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we have a diagnosis and we know procrastination can be part of an ADHD diagnosis, we stop exploring like what our flavor of procrastination is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I just think it is really important to know that while, yes, with ADHD, it can be easier to put things off and harder to work on things in the moment, when we just chalk it up to, oh, this is ADHD, oh, this is procrastination, and we
It's like we
don't allow
shut the door, right? I'm doing this
exactly.
because of ADHD, door shut,
Totally. And we don't
right?
get curious about like my
Yes.
favorite question to ask myself when I notice I'm procrastinating is not to go like, oh, it's ADHD. Of course I'm procrastinating. I say, do I want to do this? Do I actually want to do this? And just because I have a hyperactive mind that can, gets squirrely doesn't mean that I cannot stop and ask myself that question. And EFT allows me to kind of to be able to choose that, to slow things down. So
Yeah.
I am remembering in the moments where it's harder to focus or I'm easily
Yeah.
distracted to
I love
use cookies.
I love what you said. Was it calm my body, quiet my mind? Because I think
Mhm.
that that is so relatable to our listeners. Like we want to have that, right? And when you can create that for yourself, then you can, like you said, ask those questions. Do I want to do this task? Is this something I actually want to engage in and work on? Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
having a diagnosis doesn't prohibit us from being able to ask those.
Yes. Yes. So for those listening who don't actually know what EFT tapping is, what is it?
Yes, let's start there.
Let's do that.
Um, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques,
Hmm.
and it involves tapping on points around the body called energy meridians. And energy meridians are the same body system used in like acupuncture or acupressure.
Yeah.
Points that we're typically tapping on in EFT are help to calm the central nervous system. So when we're tapping on these points and we're allowing ourselves to explore some of like the deep, dark, maybe like shameful thoughts or feelings we have about ourself or the world,
Hmm.
uh, it allows us to kind of process those thoughts and feelings instead of getting stuck in them. So quite often we get stuck in that trap, that spiral swirl of emotions that we don't want to have or we wish weren't there. And we're really scared to address them because we're
Mm.
scared of what they mean about us or getting trapped in them, feeling worse. And EFT, because we're calming the central nervous system while allowing ourselves to explore those things with curiosity instead of judgment, it allows us to process. It allows
Mm.
us to open up to new shifts in perspective, which then
Mm.
oftentimes results in an increased sense of peace and a decreased sense of anxiety or distraction or shame.
Mm. Yeah, I love
The
that. Do you have an
cashew
example?
nut version
Yeah,
of
yeah, 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 totally. Could you maybe like paint a picture? Is there an example of you using this recently? Like I know you, one of the things I love in your Instagram and your YouTube and stuff is like you're always like recording yourself and showing yourself. I think I remember actually you were once in the car. I don't know if you were going to get, was it like the COVID injection or something? And you were tapping in the car literally as you were waiting in line, maybe it
Mhm.
was a COVID test, I think.
Yes.
And you were like literally tapping in the car as you were going through this experience that you were like feeling really anxious about and stuff. So I just kind of want to paint like a visual picture for people of like what it looks like and what you were feeling before and what kind of happened after. Does that make sense?
Completely. I'll use an example from today.
Oh, great.
So I was working on a little workbook so I could give it to you so you could put it in the show notes that will walk people through how
Yes.
to craft their EFT setup statements. And so I'm working on this workbook, and of course, I am being flooded with ideas. All I want to do is focus on these quick little steps. right? But my brain is giving me, here are all of the ways I could take this. It's a book, it's a novel, right? And I was having such a hard time just being
Yeah.
like, okay, but what is it today? Right? Like, all I need is one page. And so I stopped and I used EFT to help me just kind of acknowledge all of these ideas are swirling around. I'm scared if I don't get them out right now,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to go away. I'm scared if I don't give everybody anything, they're not going to understand. Or if I don't give everybody everything, then they're not
Yes.
going to understand. And then
Yes.
they're going to lose interest in it. And so I used EFT to just be like, okay, I'm going to acknowledge this is what I'm feeling, right? I want to get it right. I feel so passionate about this. I want people to understand I have to get this right so
Mm-hmm.
people can get this workbook and then get more interested in it. And
Mm-hmm.
when I allowed myself to tap on those things, I was able to make room for, okay, but in the present moment in today, here's the three most important things I need them to know. And this is all that they need to know for this particular thing. The other
Mm-hmm.
information can come later if they sign up for an email list or watch my blog or something like that. And that feels a lot better than what I would have done previously, which
Yes.
would be so kind of scattered, start on one thing, abandon it because it
Yes.
wasn't coming out, and then be frustrated and then just give up on the day and then
Yes.
go lay around drinking margaritas on the beach.
Which, don't get me wrong, I'm here for some of that,
Yeah,
but
totally.
right? But I know I've had this experience, exactly what you're talking about, where it helps you kind of like calm your brain and your body down so you can get that clarity, right?
Yes.
I remember one of the very first times I tapped, and I'm not sure if this was with you or not, but like I was incredibly anxious, like very, very, very anxious. Like I would have said like a 9 out of 10 anxiety at the time. And I think we went through just 3 rounds of tapping. Like we're talking maybe all up 5, 6 minutes. Like it's not long, right? And my anxiety level went down to, I think it was like a 3 or a 4. Like there was this huge reduction in the anxiety where I felt like I could breathe again, where I felt like I had this, clear head and I was able to think about my problems and what I was worried about and anxious about logically instead of very frantically, right?
Yes.
Like that is just that experience has always stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, that is like kind of the greatest gift that EFT allows us is more clarity.
Mm,
Sometimes when people are tapping on anxiety or certain fears and they're like, okay, but I'm still feeling anxious, I'm still feeling fearful. One of my favorite questions to ask is, okay, what's changed about your experience with this anxiety or with fear? And usually when I ask that question, he'll pause and be like, oh, well, of course I'm scared. I'm getting ready to do this new thing and I don't know how it'll
mm,
work out. Where when we don't give ourselves the pause to reflect on like, what am I actually scared of? Or we kind of, I call it like mansplaining your inner child when we like immediately go to like, oh, of course I'm feeling this way. That makes sense. And then we move on from that, like, or we start immediately telling ourselves, this is all the reasons why you shouldn't
yeah.
be scared or anxious. Like that's really where I think about the mansplaining your inner child, right? Because you're not letting yourself or that part of you have the experience they're having. You're being like,
Yeah.
no, 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 you can't feel that way. And it never feels good when we're having conversations with other people. And that is the interaction we have with them. We do it to ourselves all of the time.
Yeah. Well, I want to pause on that because it's one of the questions I kind of had for you, or one of the things I wanted us to look at is when we tell ourselves we shouldn't feel that way, right? Like with
Mhm.
my anxiety, I shouldn't be feeling anxious. I shouldn't be worried about this. Like this, it shouldn't be this big of a deal, right? That whole shooting on ourselves thing.
Mhm.
But one of the key things that EFT does, and I know you and I have talked about this before, is it helps you to acknowledge and accept what you're currently feeling. Like allow yourself to feel the anxiety, right? Allow it to be there, like accept it that that is what you're feeling, that's your experience right now. And by doing that, it's like it kind of releases. It's like if you've got a pot boiling on the stove, it's like you've like tilted the lid and let the steam out.
Exactly. And I always tell people to remind them is like when we are doing this, because what we're talking about with EFT is we tap through the points while acknowledging a maybe a scary truth about how we're thinking or feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
we're combining that with an affirmation of acceptance. And we're not, you don't have to accept the emotion, you don't have to accept the thought, you don't have to accept experiences that might have led to those thoughts and feelings. What you're accepting is that you're a human being experiencing the emotion of anxiety, experiencing the emotion of fear. Because sometimes I might hear people say, you know, even though I'm experiencing this anxiety, you know, I'm here for it. I'm accepting this anxiety. And
Mm.
don't have to do that. We just accept that we are a human being having the experience. And oftentimes that shifts something within people too.
Yeah, and I think that that's sometimes where I know I have made a mistake in the past when I've been tapping is like I've struggled to accept that this is the emotion I'm feeling because, and I think sometimes we can get it kind of tangled in our brain that if we're accepting it, we're kind of okay with it. I'm not saying I want to feel this way. I'm not saying I like feeling this way, but I'm accepting that this is what's happening in my body at the moment, and I'm acknowledging that that's currently just what's happening for me. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that what we're also doing is like there's a difference between knowing something and truly acknowledging it, right? And this
Mm.
shows up with kind of exactly what we were talking about before.
Oh,
I
yes,
have
that just hit for
I
me.
have ADHD. Yeah,
It came
I
late, but
know
I got
this
it.
thing.
Yeah,
Exactly,
there it
right?
is.
So it's like, okay, I know as somebody with ADHD, I get really distracted really easily and, you know, can be all over the place. But acknowledging it is really being able to sit with that and saying like, okay, what are contributing factors to how I talk to myself when I'm
Mm.
having those bigger moments of
Mm.
distraction? Whose side am I on? Right?
Mm.
How do I feel when I'm talking to myself that way? Because it's
Mm.
less about I need to get rid of a distraction and more about like initially just accepting this is who I am and I'm having this type of
Mm.
moment. That's what allows us to like release
Because
and maybe we go through. Sorry, go ahead.
no, like you were saying earlier, it's when we stop judging ourselves for having the experience, the feeling, the distraction, the anxiety, whatever it is, the procrastination. We stop judging ourselves and telling ourselves it shouldn't be that way, and we accept, well, it is happening. This is the truth of what I'm experiencing, feeling, right? And it's that kind of slowing down and talking to yourself with the compassion, right? I think
Totally.
that's kind of what happens when you go through that EFT process, right? Like it kind of helps you to slow down and do that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can welcome that in, right? So traditionally, um, with EFT, so I'm going to give an example of a setup statement, right?
Yeah.
So
Cool.
let's use the example earlier. Um, you know, even though I'm trying to get this small workbook done and I am being flooded with so many ideas right now, and my brain is all over the place, I accept myself and I honor what I'm feeling. That's like a traditional EFT
Mm-hmm.
setup. Sometimes one that I really love is even though I'm experiencing this overwhelm as I try to work on this workbook and I'm getting flooded with ideas, I'm open to exploring this with grace and curiosity.
Oh, I love
So
that.
welcoming in new language. What is the energy that I want to give this? How do I
Mm.
want to kind of greet that the acknowledgement, right? And so
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So even though I'm
yeah,
experiencing all of this overwhelm when I create this workbook or, with my to-do list, I am open to exploring it with compassion and curiosity. Something like that. Yeah.
yeah, whatever
Mm.
the energy that you choose. I mean, you know me, I'm all about helping people with emotions and understanding that. So I'm always very big on when you're setting goals going after desire, setting intentions, all of that. Like, don't just say, oh, I want this thing. How do I want to feel
Yes.
in the pursuit of XYZ?
100%. Yeah. Okay. I love that. One of the things I wanted us to do for our listeners is kind of break down the nervous system connection, because there's a lot of information out there on the internet where we talk about, ADHD and having a dysregulated nervous system. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand what that means. Are you happy to kind of talk to that? Like, the whole fight or flight element, and how, this is like one of the tools. I always say, like, EFT tapping is one of the most powerful tools we have in our toolbox to help us when it comes to regulating, to help us when, calming our nervous system. So I'd be really keen for you. One of the things I love from you, and I borrow and quote you this all the time, is a chill pill for your nervous system.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, still one of my favorite things. That's what EFT is, a chill pill for your nervous system. So take it away.
Yeah. Uh, okay, so I'm going to try to not get carried away in my answer for this too. But basically, because of having ADHD brains, hyperactive brains, there are things that we experience, things that we were told a lot growing up. And some of these are kind of universal to lots of people with ADHD. Some of those are specific to us, right? So when we experienced those things as kids, and because we're, kids trying to force ourselves to fit into these boxes in schools or whatever, like we might have several experiences being told by teachers or other kids or friends, parents, that we need to be a certain type of way, right? And when we are told that constantly, those start shaping our core beliefs. We start making decisions about ourselves and our place in the world. Most of those decisions we make between the ages of 0 and 6 years old.
Wow.
So something I see a lot with ADHD, I just worked with somebody on this the other day who was like, I'm not enough. Who I am isn't enough, because I can think of all of these experiences as a kid where I was too much. I was interrupting. I needed to sit down. I had too much energy. My imagination was too big. And he made the decision as a kid, then I have to stifle those things. They're not things that are productive things in society, right?
Yeah.
And so those are what we as coaches would call our core beliefs.
Yeah.
And when we're moving around in adulthood, we might not necessarily be constantly thinking, I'm not good enough. Maybe, some people do have that experience, but EFT allows us to kind of help those parts of us that are stuck back in some of those memories and then make new decisions. So I always like to think I'm a very visual person. And so anytime something traumatic or significantly emotional happens to us, such as being a kid and being told, you're not good enough, or you're too hyper, or you're too much to be friends with us, it's like that piece of us kind of peels off and is stuck in that memory, kind of like Bill Murray and Groundhog Day. And they're
Yes.
living that kind of over and over and over again. And we carry that with us. This is where
And you
a
don't
lot of our,
necessarily know, right? Like that
no,
often you've got no idea that you're being triggered now and you're having this fight or flight response in reaction to something that happened maybe when you were 4 or 5 years old.
totally. And
Your
most of
body's
those things,
reliving that experience.
exactly, because most of
Yeah.
those things are unconscious, they're operating in the background. And because as an adult, we have so many other things that are kind of distracting us, whether we have ADHD or not, right? The world demands our attention all of the time if you are a
Yes.
human living on Earth in 2025. Um, but being able to see those things, EFTA allows us to kind of peel back the onion layers and see like those experiences. And when we're able to see that with EFT, we take self-awareness a step further and allow for integration. So self-awareness would be, of course, I was told XYZ all the time growing up. So of course I feel this way now. But how do we break out of that pattern? We break out of
Mm.
that pattern by having a practice, a somatic, somatic meaning body, that allows us to take care of those parts of us that kind of peeled away in those times and are stuck hovering,
Mm.
reliving that moment in time. And so that's why in the here and now, we can go up and get ready to give a presentation. Nobody said anything to us, right? We know, okay, I've practiced this, I've got things to say, people need to hear this, but then the amount of anxiety that is felt just thinking about going up on that stage is typically because like this part of us is remembering, but I am too much for people. I go out there and I
Yeah.
share my thoughts exactly how I am, and people judge me for that.
Yes.
And then, so typically, what we do as adults, instead of being like exercising that compassion, we either start telling ourselves some of the things you said before. This is so stupid. I shouldn't feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's so dumb. Everybody is scared of public speaking. Like, I shouldn't be this scared too. Like, it's such a normal thing. Or if we do have the awareness of like, ooh, it's reminding me of this thing that happened as a kid. I mean, we still do the judgment thing. Or we immediately go to like, these are all the reasons why I'm not allowed to feel this way
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Instead of, there's a 4-year-old part of me does not have the words or capacity or understanding to even take in what I'm telling it right now. Maybe all I have to do is listen. Like, just
Mm.
really think about how good it feels to be witnessed or heard without somebody telling you you're wrong,
Yes.
or
Without
here's how you.
judgment or someone trying to fix it, right? Sometimes you
Mhm,
just want to,
exactly.
you don't want somebody to try and fix it. You just want to be heard and seen.
Yes. Let
Yeah.
me have my experience, right? We get to have our
Yes.
experience, our emotional experience before moving on from
Mm.
whatever it is we're feeling. And when we don't give ourselves that opportunity, that's what creates that steam vent, those things that like kind of build up in us. And then, one day we're in the grocery store and they're out of our favorite brand of cereal and like we have a breakdown, right? Or it's like
Yeah.
whatever it is. And it's not because of the fucking cereal, it's
Yeah.
because of like all of the things that we've kind of stifled and stuffed down.
Yeah. I still remember this profound experience I had with you a couple of years back now where I was, I had identified this memory of being like, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years old in school where everybody in class was like in breakout groups and the class was really, really noisy. The school secretary walked in and she used to do the banking. So like I think it was every Wednesday she'd come into each classroom and collect the banking and like that meant like you would take a couple of dollars and she'd take your bank books and deposit it into your bank book like into your bank account. Like I'm talking way back in the day. I'm showing my age. And she had not come in that week and I don't think she'd come in the week before. So I went up to her when she entered the classroom. I said, "Excuse me, are you still doing the banking? Is this still a thing?" Because my parents have been asking me, "Why haven't you had this collected?" And I just remember she like lost her shit in front of the whole class. Everybody went silent, like dead silent. And she's standing there yelling at me. Obviously, she's having a bad day. I don't even know what she's yelling about. And I still remember her like leaving and slamming the door and then everybody like whispering, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going bright red. And I don't know if I started crying. I'm sure I probably did. But I remember how like I had identified that that experience was really holding me back when it came to like showing up on social media and posting things and sharing things and asking questions in groups and like I could see how I was reliving that over and over and over again and how I felt in so many settings. And so I had this tapping session with you where we went back to that memory and we really explored it. And I feel like ever since then, it's like you reprogrammed my brain. That's the best way to say it. Like the memory doesn't have the intensity, the sting, any of that anymore. Like I feel so much compassion for that little girl. I feel like that experience doesn't kind of have a grip on me like it used to. Like it might show up every now and again and like but the way I view that is very different. I'm like, "Oh,
Yes.
okay, this makes sense. Like this just so reminds me of that time at school. Like it so does." Right? Like it's such a different experience now. Does that make sense? I feel like, yeah, we totally reprogrammed that.
Totally makes difference. It totally makes sense. Um, and also depending on how anxious you might be still feeling, it just tells me also there might be work around that memory to still do, because sometimes we might make several decisions in one memory, and that's always okay. It's again about peeling that onion layer back. But
Yeah.
that is what I mean by integration, right? Because when we think about mindset and we think mindset only takes place in our head, we are neglecting our body. And that's why changing our mindset can feel so hard,
Mm.
because we are not acknowledging, like, right? We're sitting here in our head being like, okay, yeah, I get that there are things in my life that maybe made me feel like I'm unworthy or undeserving. But I know in my head that that's not true. So I'm going to practice these other thoughts. But if every time you're still telling yourself, I am worthy of my dreams, but you're feeling
But your body
a,
is
in
arguing
your
with that.
stomach,
Yeah, your
or
body's not
you're
agreeing. Yeah.
noticing
Yeah.
you're noticing you're not doing the things, or
Yes.
you're not taking action, or those are the days that you get most distracted, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
are all ways that our memories and our early childhood and beyond experiences play a factor and get in the way of our mindset. So having some kind of somatic practice where
Yeah.
you were taking care of your body and you are slowing down, and that is some of the hardest work we'll ever do, living in the capitalistic society that most of us that are probably listening to the podcast,
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know,
Yeah.
I'm in the US, so
Yeah.
definitely capitalistic society.
And I think when you talk about like the somatic practice, being in your body, slowing down, I think that's also some of the hardest work for people with ADHD who have that very busy brain, sometimes a very busy body as well. And we're often very kind of attached to this idea that we need to busy our way out of it. We need to do more to stop feeling this way, right? Like, or productivity is attached to our self worth and all of these sorts of things. Whereas, like, having this kind of a practice, having these, somatic tools, helping our body to slow down, our brain to slow down, to calm down, all of that is ultimately what helps us to, you know, overcome the obstacles in our life, become more productive, all of these things, enjoy our lives, all of that. But often I find that we feel like we don't have time for that.
Yeah,
Mm.
it is the most important use of your time for anything, and that is the narrative that must change in our society today. And
Mm.
one of the things I um, like to say a lot is societal change, begins at the individual level. It begins when an individual inspires other, like, goes out and does a thing. I'm going to choose to slow down. Absolutely not. Productivity does not have to be a measurement of my success. Here is this. And
Hmm.
like that individual inspires others. And then
Yes, is that ripple
that is
effect.
the way.
Mm.
So we can spend a lot of time, and I watch a lot of people get carried away with, like, but this is so hard. Here's, what we have to do to get ahead in society. But who says? A
Yeah.
group of white men? Like, a group of old ass white men? Like, let's
Yeah.
change that narrative, right? Like, let's um bring in something new. But we have got to stop waiting for other people to do it and start leading
Lead
ourselves. A hard
100%.
thing.
Yeah, I agree. I would love for us to talk about some of the skepticism around EFT tapping because, like you and I both talked about our experience when we first were introduced to it and saw it was like, what the heck? That's a little woo woo, right? So I'm keen to kind of explore that a little bit. I thought, to start with, I was like, this is weird.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. People just dismiss it because they see you tapping on points, they, on face or whatever, and they're like, eh. Um, Also, I think that there is something too around our, as a society, discomfort with hearing other people's emotions as well. And this is, deep emotional work. And so I think that some of the skepticism, or things around that, are those kind of blocks, because I mean, the reality, the facts is there is a lot of evidence-based
So much
scientific research
evidence.
into
Yeah.
EFT. I'm one of the mentors for Dr. Peter Stapleton, who is the Australian psychologist on the forefront of the clinical research into the efficacy of EFT.
Mm.
And so I help to mentor new practitioners going through the process. And yeah, there's so much science
Mm.
behind this, what it is doing and how it is allowing our bodies to relax and integrate and synthesize new information. Um, and so, but even with science, people can still be really wary of that because it feels weird. And I think that less, again, is like skepticism about the science and more fear of the unknown, fear
Or
of
fear of
change.
looking weird, right? Like, especially if you're, I don't know, if you're out in public or what have you, just do it in the privacy of your own home first. Right? I do it out walking and people look at me and I'm like, yeah,
Me too.
I feel good.
Yeah.
Right. But I
Yep.
always say to people, like, do it once before you make a decision. You've got nothing to lose. It costs you nothing, right? Do it once before you make a decision. Right. And everyone I have taken it through, introduced, to tapping, etc., like nobody's been like, nope, that's not for me.
Yes.
Right.
No,
I haven't
totally.
had that experience. Right. But yeah, I think I always say, like, hey, I always kind of preface it. Hey, it might be a little weird, a little bit woo woo. Right.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Let's give it a go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I um, I have stopped. I used to have, and I think it's even, I'm updating my website right now. So I think there still has some language in there that's like about like woo curious, being woo curious, which I do think is fun. And also, I do think that because that term woo is such an immediate shut off to so many people,
Mm,
I have stopped using it, or even like I might say like, okay, yes, I know it feels weird thinking about tapping on your face, but I really stay away from like bringing any thoughts around it being woo or like too far out there, because it is rooted in science. Like that's the reality.
mm.
And um, if you're scared of being weird, that is something to learn to embrace,
Yeah.
because
Welcome. Welcome to the club.
exactly, weird is original. It's how we innovate. It's how we come up with new ideas. Like
Right.
everything, every new idea is thought weird
To begin with,
by
100%.
somebody at some point, right? So why
Yes.
do we think weird is, such a bad thing? And I think more just like being open-minded. And if what you're using isn't working for you, why in the hell wouldn't you
Yeah. What have you got to
use
lose?
all at your availability
Yeah.
and give something a try, recognizing that, more often than not, again, to greet that with compassion, though, for us as practitioners, us as humans, because what I always kind of am realizing when somebody is really giving pushback on that is it's a fear thing.
Yeah.
It's not in like being able to say like, I don't really get it, or it's not for me, or and here's why, without trying it, is just an excuse to stay
Stay stuck
in.
in something. Yeah.
And I mean, like me, right? It took me a year, but I had to have that experience of dismissing it at first before trying it. But
Yes.
almost, I think, because that's part of my story, because I was so resistant to it in the beginning, when I first started really kind of using it and getting into it, it was like that much more powerful, because at least to me, in
Yeah.
the change that I was kind of undertaking for myself, because it was like, man, this was here, the whole time. And because I'm pretty like future oriented always, like I haven't ever spent any time like regretting, oh, if I had only done that. Like my journey is my journey, and at least I have it now, and I just feel grateful for that.
Mm.
I second it clicked was when it was supposed to click for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And I had a similar experience to you. I remember living in London and I was like, that was one of the toughest times of my life. And my best friend somehow stumbled upon EFT and she was doing this tapping and she's like, come on, you should do it with me. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so she kept doing it. She was like doing this program and she was doing it like every day. And I was watching her and I was like, this is weird. But I just kind of ignored it. And then it was like years later where I actually gave it a go. And I was like, holy wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I think this just came to me, and hopefully it doesn't offend anybody. But
Oh, now we're intrigued.
like nothing is fucking weirder than what is going on in current US administration,
I
right?
will give you
If
that. I agree.
if you can buy no matter what side you're on, like some of the stuff that is coming out of there, the decisions being made, the the down to the more serious, heartbreaking ones to like the ridiculous ones, like photoshopping Trump's head and on the May 4th and into a
Yeah.
Star Wars theme. Like that's weird, right?
Yeah.
Like
This is nothing.
we live
Yeah.
if you're worried about weird and you
Yeah.
don't like that, live in a weird ass world. Here
Yeah.
is what we're living weird times, might as well embrace it all, right?
100%. Tell me, do you have a link where somebody can go to like see you tapping, be walked through like what this looks like, how they do it, all of that sort of thing? Like your YouTube channel,
Yes.
maybe? Like,
I
what would
have,
you
yep,
recommend?
I have a YouTube channel, and in my YouTube channel, there's like, you can go to the tab and just do playlists.
Yeah.
But when you're tapping, when you're doing EFT, the most power is when the words are specific to you, like in your experience. And also, with that being said, you can have incredible shifts tapping along with somebody else's words. So I have a number of tapping meditations. There's a how-to on there. And then there's just a number of tapping meditations. You can just click play and then tap along, saying what I say, tapping where I tap, and just checking in
Yeah.
on your body. What's going on with me? What new shifts am I having? Anything labeled personal tapping is me doing my personal work, and I film myself doing that, self-coaching and tapping, and I am talking to the camera because I'm also like a mentor of new practitioners. I started doing that to help them kind of see like here's all the different ways you can experiment with tapping, and you
Yes.
can bring it in and really make it your own. Because whereas yes, there are certain ways and you want to use it and maybe certain words and things like that, like the reality is like what do you feel called to do? And all of my work is
Mm.
about helping people build like rock hard self-trust. So if somebody is ever tapping in between sessions or reaches out to me from watching the YouTube video and they're saying like, oh well, I said a couple things differently or I tapped here instead, my first response is always like, okay, did you feel better?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Trust
Great.
yourself, right?
Yes.
Like use
Yes.
these as a
Trust yourself.
guide, but it is about you developing this relationship with yourself, developing this relationship with these parts of you. And I like to think in terms of parts work. Sometimes I joke that my pronouns are she, we, because when you talk to me and I talk about myself, I usually say like we, meaning all my parts, right? And
I have to interject there and be like, have you, like, is the Shiwi like a universal thing around the world? Do you know what that is?
it is, and I do have
Okay.
one. And if you know what a shiwi is and you're listening to this, practice in the shower.
Yeah.
I had
Yes. Yes. Always practice in the shower first. Okay. Enough
getting
said. I love it.
talking.
I love it. Um, Tell us about like how you use EFT tapping in your coaching practice with your clients. I feel like you've kind of covered some of that, but I would love just to kind of hear that from you.
Totally. So when I work with people, we are really tackling those memories, like helping identify like what is it that I want, what's in my way of having it, and then exploring those really like deep rooted things that again might be unconscious
Mm.
in order to alleviate the kind of mental experience and the self-judgment we have around those. And it can, like you have already said from your experience, it can happen very quickly. So sometimes I like to talk about it as like it's like time travel. Um,
Yes.
because it is like, and like anything, it's a practice. You have to incorporate it. There's maintenance work, like things like that. And people can have what we call like these minute shifts, like where something like completely, I mean, I've had an experience where, I mean, literally like my life changed as a result from this one EFT session immediately. And I've never, that was like permanent, right?
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that new layers don't come up. We're human beings, and doing this work isn't about like never having an emotion again. It is about
Mm.
like, think of EFT, emotional freedom techniques, as the freedom to feel anything without the fear that you're gonna drown in it, or that it's gonna kill you. And that's not me being dramatic,
But
not just
that's
in
how it
that's
can feel. And I know our listeners will get that because RSD,
yes,
right? Like that's something we're talking about a lot.
yes,
The pain of rejection just feels like it will kill you
totally.
sometimes. So,
And that's why
yeah.
we have such high, I mean, suicide is an epidemic in the entire world
Mm.
right now. The rates of suicide have only like increased, and
Mm.
they were already increasing before COVID. And I haven't looked at the
Mm.
most recent research, but I don't imagine the world has not become a kinder, gentler place since then,
Mm.
right? So um
Mm.
when I say that, it actually isn't a joke, because that what else is suicide but death by feeling too much, death by like
Mm.
making assumptions about being broken or things
Mm.
like that, right? And the reality is it's not true, and shame breeds in silence. And
Oh,
so the
yeah.
more like we keep those things locked in us without allowing ourselves to truly acknowledge them, with ourselves or with others, it's just feeding and growing and growing. And EFT allows us to chisel away at that.
Yeah. I think it's also like it gives us this tool which kind of helps us create the safety we need and want to be able to feel all
Mhm.
of life's experiences, all the things, right? Like you said, we're not going to eliminate the feelings. You're always going to have the full human experience, all of the emotions, right? The good, the bad, the in between. But it allows you kind of to have something safe to help you through all of
Totally.
that. Mm.
And the deeper work, like the work I do with people, then allows people for the rest of their lives to have those experiences and not make it mean anything about them, which means they
Yes.
know, like, A,
Not
they
be
know how to
hijacked by them.
totally, and they
Yeah.
know how to talk to themselves in between. They know how to use EFT themselves
Yeah.
for the rest of their lives. And they know when it's time to be like, all right, it's time for me to work with somebody, or it's time for me to get support. They know what support we
Yes.
need, right? Being strong, being with it, being self-assured does not mean that we don't ever ask for support. I am a expert level clinical EFT practitioner. I still hire people
Oh,
when I
yeah.
need to
Right?
for sessions with them, because there's just
Yes.
things that, it feels good to invest in yourself in that way and to just take care of yourself in
Yeah.
that way. And then having somebody like kind of hold that space and be able to reflect things
Yeah.
back to you, then you know where to take
Yeah.
your own private
Practice. Yeah.
sessions, or
Yeah.
your practice. And I always tell people, because I get a lot of questions around, oh, I've heard EFT is such a great tool for dysregulation. It is, but just like any of our tools, the more we're using them prior to having an issue come up, A, we find that it's easier for us to remember to use EFT when we're feeling really dysregulated, but also because we have more access to feelings like joy and contentment and happiness and confidence, we find that our lows don't get quite as low,
Mm.
and we get
Or
out of
as
them
long. Yeah.
much faster.
Mm.
And whereas we have an infinite capacity to feel like those higher vibe emotions like joy and happiness and excitement and things like that, that doesn't mean like the ratio doesn't have to be the same. So it's not like we have to feel like all this immensity of heavy stuff. Like we have to feel that it's going to be a part of life, yes, but it just gets easier. It gets
Mm.
different. We aren't spending
As
all of that
much
time.
time stuck in there. Yeah. Mm.
We're stuck in it or
Yeah.
ignoring it or judging ourselves for having
Yeah.
it. It's just like, oh, here's what I'm feeling. And I talk a lot about both and, right? When you find you're tapping and something's not shifting for you, a great question to ask yourself is like, okay, but what's changed about how I am, my experience of this emotion that I'm having right now? And oftentimes people will be like, oh, well, it's, of course I feel this way. Or, um, yeah, I just feel calmer around it because I'm not judging myself. And usually it just kind of continues to settle even after, in the days or weeks after an EFT session.
Yeah, and I can definitely attest to that after having some with you, for sure. One of the things I want everybody to do who has Instagram is to go and follow you, because especially all of my fellow pet lovers, we have a lot of cat lovers who listen to this podcast. You have two delicious cats and you share pictures and videos of them. But not only that, you actually, like many of us, you love to travel, right? So we get all of your travel stuff, but we also get all of the coaching, all of the tapping, all of that. So it's like this beautiful eclectic mix. It's one of my favorite Instagram accounts, I have to be honest. Your Instagram is one that I will like always like look at the stories and look at. So I definitely want everyone to go and follow that who's on Instagram. So tell us all of the ways in which our listeners can connect with you and come and learn more about the work that you do.
Number one is Instagram is one of those ways, and it's at Jess.Johnson coaching. You can also check out my website, which is under construction right now, but I'm going to say certainly by July 1st, it's going to be done. And one of the big things with that is adding a blog to it. So if you have questions about EFT, about mindset work, about how to extend grace, and I think of it as space and grace to yourself, all of those things, please feel free to hit me up, ask questions about that, because that can help me develop content for the blog.
Yes.
Also, if you want to book a consultation with me to talk about how the working with me will impact your life one-on-one and how to bring EFT into your life more, you can do that through my website as well. You can also, and I'll send you these things, go to my YouTube channel. It's called Make Shift Happen with Jess Johnson.
Shift Happen.
Make Shift Happen.
I like it.
And that has, like I said, there's a playlist on there called WTF is EFT. That is a 3 video playlist that tells you like, here's what EFT is, here's the points, here's how do you put these things together. And also you can sign up for my email list, which will send you
and you write like
regular.
Yeah, semi-regular. I love that. Like ADHD regular.
Yes, exactly.
But like you've got a hilarious way of writing. Like it's so relatable and humorous and fun. Like, yeah. So I definitely think
that's what I'm known for too, is like helping people be more themselves and allowing that. One of the reasons probably like you like my Instagram, because it is me. There's no
like so is
branding on that. The brand is me experiencing my life, because I think it's so important as an entrepreneur to build a business around your life, not a life around your business. I take that very seriously. And so
100%.
I want people to see like, look, I practice what I preach. I'm out here like doing these things, and here's how I use tapping when I come into these situations, and here's how I use it proactively. Here's how I use it in the moment with things.
Which I love. It's so good to see that, right? Actually seeing it in action, I think is so helpful. Yeah. Yeah. And I will link to all of those things in the show notes, of course. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jess.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And like I said, I'm going to send you the workbook I just developed that will help with these steps too, kind of walking people.
And I can link to that so people can grab that. Yeah. Straight out of the show notes. Fantastic. Thank you, Jess. And I know people will likely have questions, because like when I talk about EFT and tapping, they often do. So I do want to encourage them to check out your website, to ask those questions, to connect with you on socials, all of that sort of thing. Because like I see you are the true expert in this field, and you've got a wealth of knowledge. And also like you are living proof of just how powerful tapping is. So thank you for doing the work that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey friend, if you want some more help navigating and thriving with ADHD and some help applying everything that you're learning here on the podcast, then head over to our website, navigatingadultadhd.com.